Welcome back to Luck on Sunday. Alongside me is Grade 1 winning trainer Ruth Jefferson. She has been on the show all through so far. We chatted about waiting patiently earlier on, but now we're going to chat a little bit more about how things have gone in the last 12 months or so, Ruth. Of course, this time last year, it must have been a very strange period for you. There was a celebration, obviously, of waiting patiently winning at Ascot, beating Q Card under Brian, but it came a day after your dad's funeral. So how's the time passed?
Yeah, it's had some up in words, really, I suppose. Dad was very ill for the final 2 months before he passed away in February last year. Very ill. He was only up the gallops once in that period, and he struggled as well. He was very sick that day, and I mean, although we knew, and we all knew, that he wasn't going to be around much longer, it still comes as a shock. Passed away on the 2nd of February, and his funeral was on the 16th, because there's no jump racing in the north that year. And then we're down here at Ascot on the 17th, waiting patiently. And I suppose Dad's attitude to life was that life always goes on when things go wrong or people pass away. And, you know, I suppose it was nice to have something good happen at a time when a lot of what was happening wasn't good.
And was it also, I guess, a bit of comfort that the horse that he believed in, that you believed in, delivered at the highest level?
Like I say, the last 2 months he wasn't very well, and I was training his horses. He was leaving me to it, which meant in his world, he told me he wasn't going to interfere, but that lasted about 48 hours. And, you know, we'd missed a couple of races because the horse hadn't been very well. He'd had a head cold, and we gave him a bit of long time. And remember when we went to Kempton and he won, and then the listed race, and then the Ascot chase was a logical step, really. So came back and Dad was like, "It could win a Grade 1," and I was like, "Oh, Grade 1s are hard to win." And then a week later, I was like, "Do you know, maybe you could win a Grade 1?" He was like, "No, Grade 1s, you can't win a Grade 1 that easily." And you know, we to and froed it between us what sort of chance he had, but I think he'd have been very pleased. Yeah. Very pleased had he been there.
I don't this to come over in the wrong manner, but because obviously you'll miss your dad. But from the training perspective, how much do you miss his presence?
It's a difficult one, isn't it? Because we'd worked alongside each other for quite a while, and watching Sam's interview, we have a similar relationship that Sam and Nige had, that me and Malcolm had, in that we disagreed vocally if we disagreed, and if we agreed, that was fine. It's hard to say because you don't have a sounding board, but at the same time, it means you have to trust your own judgment. You know, there's no passing the buck.
Had he prepared you to do that, to trust your own judgment?
I'm not sure. I don't know if he's prepared me or not, really. It's hard to say, but we're both pretty strongly opinionated and both quite stubborn. So I think when you are opinionated and quite stubborn, you go with your own instincts, don't you? And if you don't think something's right, then generally I think you should just not do it. Yeah. If you're happy with everything, then have a go.
Just in the genes, then? You just
it must just be genetic, yeah. Oh, it's Mum's fault. You can blame either of us. Take your pick.
But great to get off the mark with a horse like Waiting Patiently. I mean, what a horse to have.
Very lucky to have him. Very lucky to have him. We obviously inherited him when Keith Reevely retired, and you know, since then, and since he went chasing, and chasing was his game, wasn't it? And he's improved from strength to strength. And you know, we're very lucky that Richard Collins had the faith in us that we kept him. You know, because every yard needs a good horse, and you know, we're very lucky to have him.
Yeah, we've spoken about yesterday already, and the fact that no excuses for him yesterday. Ignoring surname, because we've got to take him out of the equation. As Paul said, he could just be extra special, so that's fine. But what sort of plan would you have with Waiting Patiently for the future, sort of long-term thinking? I know that you've got options, Ryanair, Aintree, etc. next. But do you think that he's a horse that can be campaigned, a rigorous campaign for the season? How important is it for him to have perfect conditions before you want to let him run?
I mean, the conditions weren't really what I would call perfect yesterday, and we let him take his chance. I'm not sure I'd chance him again on that ground. It was a lot quicker than we had certainly ran him on, and I mean, thankfully he is all right this morning. But at times he didn't look entirely comfortable, but I'm not going to use that as an excuse. I think he ran his race. I think he's probably a horse that's better on softer ground because he handles it better than a lot of other horses handle heavy, soft ground. I certainly don't feel that getting beat yesterday makes him suddenly not a good horse. I still think he's a very good horse. It's hard to say. I mean, we were trying 3 miles in the King George and didn't get far enough. It's difficult to say on yesterday's race that we want 3 miles. You know, and we'll just go away and think about it. But there's races there, but I would much prefer to have him back on soft. I think he's a happier horse on soft ground.
Would you try the King George again if the ground came up soft?
Possibly. I'm not going to rule it out. Definitely not, because you should never rule anything in or out. But it's difficult to say, isn't it, based on yesterday? You wouldn't say he was crying out for a step up in trip, whereas last year you would have said he handled a trip beautifully. But then again, it was his first full race of the season. And, you know, things have been different this year, but I'll not rule it out.
Yeah, the way he finished the race last year, I think everybody immediately thought the race that would suit him down to the ground would be the King George when he rolled past Q Card. But I guess yesterday's race, but maybe if you take out Surname, you're still thinking he's
yeah, but
held
you
on
can't.
well.
I mean, I'd love to take Surname out, preferably before the race. Then he'd have won another Grade 1, but you can't take horses out, can you? It is what it is. As much as you'd like to, we got beaten. I don't know. I thought he ran fine, but there was just once or twice I thought he didn't look as comfortable as he can look, and you know he was taking on horses that had ran a lot this season and things like that. But I think he still ran a very good race. So
it's possible that he could come on for that run this year.
I don't think he'll come on for fitness. He wasn't blowing, but he might come on just purely for the experience of having the race.
Okay. We'll talk more about some of the good horses that you've got in just a moment. Just a bit about your grounding, because of course part of your grounding came at a time when your dad had one of the smartest hurdlers we've seen in Dato Star, who you had quite a bit to do with, if I'm right.
No, I did a little bit. I would be, what year was it? He won the champion bumper in '95, didn't he?
Yeah.
I used to use road work, because we used to do road work, because we don't do it anymore because there's too much traffic. So in '95, I'd probably be about 12. No, I'd just been older than that. When I left school, 98, 16. I must be about 14. So yeah, I used to do his road work.
Okay.
In my school holidays. But I was never allowed to canter. Yeah, it wasn't bad. Tullamore Toft, Dato Star and King's Measure.
Oh,
there weren't three bad horses to go trot up the roads. Very safe rides. I was never allowed to canter him, and in fairness, that was probably a good idea. He was keen at home. He was one of them really active horses that took a grip up the gallops, and I'd never have stopped. Yeah. So, but yeah, I used to do that. I used to take him racing a lot, lead him up a lot. Yeah. Led him up when he won his Christmas hurdle.
Well, we'll take a look. Before we get to Christmas, just tell me about when he went to Cheltenham for the bumper, and what the feeling was like, and what sort of confidence the team had.
We bought him in May for 4,200 guineas at the Doncaster store sale, and it was an accordion, which was an unraced stallion. It was his first crop of 3-year-olds, and he was out of a mare that had never ran. A fairy king mare. And he was just a naturally athletic horse that come to hand quite quickly, and he ran at Ayr, I think it'd be New Year. There's a meeting around New Year, and he won the bumper, but he won the bumper by about 40-something lengths, never come off the bridle on bottomless ground, and it was a bit surreal. You know, and then he went to Haydock and he won exactly the same way again. So you couldn't really not go to Cheltenham, but he was just a 4-year-old. Yeah. You know, and he won, I think he won by a head, didn't he? Yeah. Never won by very far on good ground. Yeah. You know, but, I mean, it's difficult, isn't it? Because when a horse has won like that, you're confident, but at the same time, you probably haven't beat an awful lot behind you that's come out and
yeah, well, we're looking at...
I know, it's not something you get to watch very often anymore, is it?
Oh, superb, though. Absolutely.
But the second horse was a very good horse as well, wasn't it?
Red Blazer of Henrietta Knight. Absolutely. Oh, just seeing him now actually sends tingles down the spine, because he was the way he raced as well. He travelled so strong. I mean, when you say that, obviously you weren't allowed to canter.
No, I wasn't allowed to canter.
But watching him through his races, jockey always seemed to be sitting, holding on to him, because he always wanted to go that little bit faster.
And he was a fast horse. He ran on the flat, didn't he?
Yes.
He ran in the November handicap. Yeah. One year, I remember that. It was just a fast horse that he needed to hang on to, but he was very quick over his jumps and very accurate over his jumps.
Yeah.
And I mean, in fairness, he must have been a good spin. Whoever was riding him, wasn't he?
It's all the road work that
Yeah, it was all the
prepared
road
him
work.
well for. The Christmas hurdle, I think it was 1999.
99, yeah.
Yeah. What was that experience like, coming down to lead him up at?
It was a bit like, this year I spent Christmas Day at Kempton. We came down the day before. I think we only had him running that year, because the following year when he went, either the year before or the year after, we had another horse running, but there was only him that year. And it was lovely, actually, because my dad's brother-in-law, Uncle Joe, had a share.
Oh.
So it was a little bit more of a family affair than normal, and he won it nicely. I think, if I remember rightly, it was when they used to have it was William Hill, was it? No, it was Smurfit.
Oh, good. Might have been William Hill, I can't remember now.
No, I think it was Smurfit.
20 years ago, you're testing.
Yeah.
Okay, Smurfit.
Because it was the same people who sponsored Champion Hurdle.
Okay.
Kappa, isn't it? Smurfit Kappa.
Yes.
And I think it was that one, or one of the William Hill girls at Newcastle. We didn't want them in the photo, so we just quite how many headbutted them out of the way. Went in, had his photo taken.
Well ahead of his time.
Well ahead of his time, wasn't having it. Yeah. Came in, and I just remember I had to take him out the winners' enclosure, and there was, I don't know how many photographers, and they said, we take a turn and turn him in. And it was like, honestly, it was like a catwalk model. Started at one end, and he slowly moved the whole way around to make sure everyone got his good angle. And then walked out the parade ring again, and I was like, well, you know what you're doing. But it was that sort of horse. He knew when people were looking at him, and he put on a show. And
with regards to raw ability, the best horse that your dad?
Probably. I mean, we've had some other good horses that maybe had problems. He had his problems, but there were never stopping problems. I think he had to have a curb pin fired. He had a fibrillating heart. Had to go down to Newmarket, have it stopped and restarted. Had a touch of a leg. A touch of high suspensory, touch of a hind suspensory, maybe a curb or something. So he had his little issues, but never stopped him from being
You're
quite
always
talented.
riding these challenges, no matter how whatever level these horses are. They're always testing you.
Some horses are more fragile than others, and you're just a case of patching up and going on. And some injuries they'll never have another problem with it. It just depends.
What were the other horses that would have been, when you talk about the good ones that your dad had? What were the other ones that would have been competing with Dato for?
I suppose he was probably his proper Grade 1 horse, but he had some good handicappers and he had some nice horses. Tindari was his first Cheltenham winner. He got killed in an accident, oddly, not a couple of years later, a year after. He got hit by a lorry, which wasn't the best of circumstances. And then Cape Tribulation, he was Grade 2 winner, ran the Gold Cup. And at a glance was a very good handicapper. Yeah. So there's horses about that he had. He normally found something that popped up that was a little bit better than average. We might have a look at Cape Tribulation, a little closer look at him. And he was a horse, as you say, he progressed to ending up, through handicaps and ended up in a Gold Cup. Yeah, he come to us and he'd been trained for the flat and never ran. And I remember when we got him, he wouldn't go at the gallop. It was terrible. Just used to cling to the rail, hang up the rail, wouldn't go very fast and everything. And we were like, oh, it was a terrible workhorse. And we didn't think he was any good. Couldn't get him to do anything, and we took him to Market Raisin for a racecourse gallop. And Paul Pickard, who was our stable apprentice at the time, rode him, and he could barely hold him, and he couldn't pull him up. He went halfway. He did 2 miles. We were doing 2 miles, and he did. He must have nearly 2.5. Couldn't pull him up down the back straight. And it's the first time he ever showed anything, but he never showed anything at home. He was the worst workhorse in the yard, and you had to work him with something, either a baby or something equally useless. Yeah. That showed nothing at home. He just wasn't interested in doing anything at home, but came alive on the track. Is that the kind of horse that you prefer, the ones that come alive on the track, rather than give you the evidence at home and maybe? I don't mind what they do at home if they show it on a track. The worst ones are the ones that show a lot at home and then go racing and do nothing, and you're wondering what you're doing wrong, but they're just morning glories. Any examples of horses that have done that too? No, I better not name a few. Might upset someone. But he was a horse that just didn't show a lot at home, and that was him. It was an easy ride, and he wasn't having any of it. What about At a Glance? When I say that name and think At a Glance was a bit like According to Pete in that it was a homebred out of a mare that the owners had raced, and the real feel-good stories, aren't they, that you like to have in racing. Yeah. He never won a bumper. It wasn't the best of rides, actually, when he first come. Was a bit of a playboy, although he was a gelding. He used to spend a lot of time on his back legs and dropping people. It wasn't very pleasant, but turned out one of the best rides in the yard, and most of his family have been the same.
Yeah.
I think I didn't break at a glance, but I think after that I broke the majority of his siblings,
Oh, right.
right down to the ones we have now, and
Yeah.
they're all the same. They're not straightforward when you first get them going, and then by the time they've done it, yeah, they're lovely.
Yeah.
Never won a bumper, and I can't think where we ran him. Did we run him? We ran him somewhere, and he missed the first, and Ruby Walsh pulled him up about 2 runs before he went to Cheltenham, and probably the best thing that ever happened to him. He then went to, well, he never had a hard race. I can't think what race he ran in. He jumped 2 hurdles and pulled up, and then went to Market Race and won an easy race, went to Cheltenham and won the boys' race, and then went to Aintree and won the handicap. Was it the Alderhay? I think it was, the 2.5 mile. But lovely horse, very straightforward, very easy to deal with, and great for his owner, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. You've got his half brother, Northern.
I have all of them. All of them.
You have, but Northern Soul was the one we were talking about. I mean, because he looks quite.
Yeah, he's a lovely horse. He's a big horse. He was a rig, so we never gelded him till he was 2.
Right.
And he was a presenting, and he was a big horse. Even at 2, he was a big, strong horse, and we've never rushed him because they look strong, but they're not necessarily strong. They can still be weak. And he finished. He was one of those horses did everything so easily at home. You thought he'd be green, and he got beat 10 lengths in his first bumper around Market Raisin, and you weren't disappointed because he travelled well. They quickened up. He looked completely confused and ran on down the straight. Got beat 10 lengths, and we were like, well, he'll come on for that. But probably wanted better ground.
Right.
So we left him for a long time, and then he came out and won his next bumper at Market Raisin, and we were thrilled. Wasn't right when I took him to Carlisle. Turned out in hindsight, and then won on day after Boxing Day at Wetherby over 2 mile. Well, it's a short 2 mile at Wetherby, and it wasn't an ideal race, but he won it anyway, and the form's been frank since. Yeah. So I'm quite pleased with him.
Absolutely. A couple of other horses that I wanted to mention to you. Mega Yates ran in the listed Mayor's Hurdle, putting together a lovely profile at the moment. She is.
Yeah, she is. She'd won a point. She's first foal out of the mare. She's by Yates out of a presenting mare, and the mare was unraced from the family Snoopy Loopy. And she was a first foal, and she was bought by people, a syndicate in Ireland, and she went and trained by Monbeg Donica Doyle. Yeah. Won a first point to point. Came to the sales. She cost 60 grand, which isn't neither cheap nor expensive in this day and age. And she's the most straightforward filly we've ever had. That's been talented. A lot of straightforward fillies aren't very talented. They normally need a quirk, but this doesn't have a quirk anywhere. She's the ultimate professional. She just takes everything in a stride. We rode her for a bit when she come, and then turned her out to grass. She's come in. Was never planning on running her in a bumper, because although she sort of showed enough speed for a bumper at home, I didn't feel she was really going to benefit from one. But it never rained, so I couldn't school her on grass, and I like to school them on grass before they run. Right. So we took her to Carlisle, and she won that. And then she was going hurdling, but it still never rained, so I took her to Cheltenham for the listed bumper, and I thought she put up a really good performance that day, and she's very tough and very brave. Form, third horse has won. Yeah. Alan King's horse been placed again in another listed bumper against the boys, and I think the form of the race is quite good. She won her first hurdle on Boxing Day at Wetherby, which on paper you'd have expected her to do. The second horse has come out and won since. There's a few come out of her first bumper and won as well up at Carlisle. So the form around is strong, and it was a big ask yesterday. The winner was 9, the second horse was 7, and the 4-year-old of Nicky Henderson's found life a bit tough out of Juvenile Company, but look, she put up a really good performance. She did only have a flu jab last week, and I don't think it affected her. I think she just probably got out-battled by 2 slightly physically stronger horses, but she ran a nice race. She had a little blow afterwards, and she'll come on for that. A
horse I'm particularly excited to see what happens to him next is Buster Valentine, who won a couple of races. Then you decided to head to Cheltenham for the Ballymore, and obviously it was going to be a quality race. How well do you think he acquitted himself?
It was a tough one, Buster, because he'd come and he'd won his point. He's 6 now. He's a year older than Meg. He won his point as a 5-year-old and cost quite a bit. And he came and he went back to Ireland and then come back to us and just took a little time to settle into the routine. And then he managed, I think he must have got himself cast or something, because he was all wrong one morning and a tad lame, and took him to the Batman, and he had to have a couple of easy weeks. And his prep just was slow coming. And probably didn't matter. So by the time I ran him, the ground had come heavy. So I was always going to start him at 2.5 mile, and I didn't. Took him up to Ayr for a 2 mile race. On paper, wasn't a very good race, and he won it very well. Idled a bit in front. So then stepped him up to 2.5 round Newcastle against a couple of horses that had quite good form. And again, it just wasn't a gallop. The hacked around, and then it turned into a bit of a sprint. And he won his race, which is great. But we learned absolutely nothing about him. He'd won 2 novice hurdles. I didn't know what his best trip was, what he wanted, or anything else. It just won without really learning a lot. So I said, well, the owners are big fans of Cheltenham, and I said, look, if we're going to go to Cheltenham, we might bet going early and just letting him have a go around and seeing if he even handles the track. Yeah. He handled the track, and I thought Leighton Aspel gave him a great ride. He really grabbed hold of him and said, come on, you. And he looked at one point like he was just going to fade out of it completely and stayed on well. Yeah, if Ollie Murphy's horse Brewing Up a Storm had stood up, we'd have been third, but it's a jump race, isn't it? We finished second, we were well beaten, but I don't mind that. I don't think he's ready for Cheltenham yet, but he's learnt a lot from that race, and it's not going to stop him being a useful horse.
No, he's definitely exciting. Speaking of learning a lot, obviously you've had 12 months now, since waiting patiently to win in the Grade 1, and 12 months have passed. What have you learnt now that you're in complete control of the yard at Moulton?
Depends who you ask, really. Not a lot. I came into the back of it last year because I took over the licence in February. So I had February, March, April, my first season last year. And we weren't having a vintage year. The winners were slow coming, and everything was bottomless, and the horses weren't firing as such. So we just had the 3 winners. Cyrus won the Moor Battle, won the Ascot Chase, and then Northern Soul won the Bumper. And then we had the change of season, and the first 3 winners in April. In the beginning of May were all winners. So I thought, well, that's all right. We've matched last season's total. Anything after this is a bonus. And it was just, it's the same thing as the training's not, I'm going to say, well, it is difficult, but not difficult. It's as easy or as hard as you can make it, and it depends on what pressures you've got from outside influences and other people and your owners and things. But if you can put your horse first and just run when you think your horse is right, the conditions are right, and you've got a good chance, then generally your horse will run well. And if it doesn't, there's normally a reason. But it's just give horses time. If you give them time and run them when they're right and things are in their favour, then generally they'll run well and everyone's happy. The yard, we have a routine in the yard. People tend to pick it up quite fast. Tina, who is the head girl now, she's been with us for 18 years. She knows exactly how we like things done, and if I was rushed into hospital for a week, nothing would fall apart because she would just know exactly what she's doing, and that's how you want. We've got a good team of staff and everything else. So, yeah. You
seem really grounded, feet on the floor, taking everything, I guess, in the manner that your dad did. You learned from him. So obviously you mentioned Cyrus. There was also Cloudy Dream. You don't train those horses anymore. Do you deal with that calmly and say, well, it is what it is, they've gone, we move on, we've got horses that we concentrate on, and we look forward?
Well, you have to remember that an awful lot of things are outside of your own control, aren't they? What other people decide to do is outside of your control. And the owners of those horses felt that their horses, they wanted to move their horses, and, fair play to them and good luck to them and all the rest. And we always knew, and, Dad and I had always said that some people will support you and some people won't, and that's just the way it goes, isn't it? We were expecting that some people wouldn't support us. And you can't spend your whole time worrying about what's not there anymore. You've just got to, it's like losing a good horse, isn't it? You're devastated. If one's injured or fatally injured, you're devastated, aren't you? But you can't spend your whole time thinking about it. You've just got to move on. And what we've always had is, without always having Grade 1 horses, we've always had good horses, and we have a nice standard of horses. We're not, I'm not training 30 0 to 100 horses that you're struggling to win races with. I'm training 30 quite nice horses, and that should win races. So, to be honest, I'm in probably quite a good position, and I'm not complaining about it.
And training them brilliantly. Ruth, thank you.
I'm not sure about brilliantly, but we're doing okay.
Well, I'm keeping my fingers crossed. Buster Valentine's going to win you a Grade 1 down the line.
Hopefully.
One day, over fences.
Chase, yeah.
Yeah, we're in sync. Ruth Jefferson, been fascinating listening to her speaking about the last 12 months. She obviously in charge of the stable at Moulton. Stay with us. We'll be back after this break.
Luck on Sunday, proudly sponsored by Al Basti Equiworld Dubai.